Of course, I want to say thank you to the United Church of Christ in Simi Valley that's allowed me to have this platform and to spend some time with you. They want you to know that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome there, and you are welcome here today as well. And thank you so much for being here for the Embrace Life Project. We spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks talking about this dichotomy between the fractured world, the separateness that we live in. I'm a thing and you're a thing. And we've spent some time talking about connectedness, how we repair those fractures in our relationships and even in ourselves. We've talked about turning that dial of connected consciousness. How do I relate as a self to someone else? How do we bridge that gap, that fracture that exists through our communication, through being together? How do we bridge that gap of fracture by practicing the arts of connectedness? And last week, we kind of focused that a little internally. How do we repair fractures within ourselves? And we said there are 3 types of spiritual practice that'll do that. It's the meditation, the contemplation of no thing, how we release attachments from things that we do not need to be attached to. Contemplation, how we gain insight into one particular thing. And then visualization, imagining everything that is possible. And I asked you at the end of last week to do a little mini project of a higher self visualization if there were no restrictions and you could have any characteristics that you wanted. If you wanted to be a certain way, if you wanted to be very open, or if you wanted to be very kind, or maybe you wanted to be very wealthy, or maybe you wanted to be very balanced. However you saw yourself as sort of the 2.0 model of you. We asked you to think about those things and use those powers of visualization, imagination to think about that. A short way of saying it would be we were envisioning our potential. Now, I don't know what was all on your list. I made up sort of a sample list. This is not necessarily say anything about me, but say if I thought about the person I would ultimately want to be. Maybe I'm a very open person. I love to be around people. I really want to be that kind of person. I want to be a good listener. Maybe I'm a person who feels like maybe I talk too much and I'm always trying to take the limelight and center stage. Maybe I need to work on that and think, in the ultimate me, I would be a good listener. Maybe I'll be healthy. Maybe I'm not where I need to be physically. Maybe I want to be successful, or maybe I want to be just comfortable, able to not have to worry about bills and things so much, whatever your definition of that would be. Or maybe I'm just not that happy, not feeling good all the time. And if in my vision of myself, I would be happy-go-lucky person, okay? So envisioning our potential, imagining what's possible. Now, these past 3 weeks, we've been going real advanced. We've been counting to 2. We've been using 0, 1, and 2. Today, we're just going to concentrate on 0 and 1. And then next week, we're going to work on the 1 and 2 when we build community. When we think about the 0 and 1 today, what I'm going to ask you to think about is the 0 representing all the potential, that higher self experiment that we did, all the imagination we have. And then I'm going to have you think of the number 1 as what's actually happening in your life. So what we did with the higher self visualization is we pulled from this realm of what's possible, our imagination, our power to envision, and we pulled that down and wrote it down in real life, okay? Now, as we go to look at our potential, maybe we then take a look at our actual life, and perhaps it's not going as well as we would like it to be. Instead of open, we're withdrawn. We'd love to be out and be listening and interacting with people, but maybe the reality is that we're isolating. We've been in quarantine for so long. We're not necessarily ready to go out and participate in that way. We want to be nice and healthy, but we have a really bad sweet tooth, and that's kind of preventing us from being that. Maybe the reality that instead of being content and happy, we're just barely scraping by and barely hanging on. Now, your list may not be this dramatic, but I wanted to use this format so that we could explore it a little bit. So now we're using the 0 and 1, but we're looking at it from the other perspective. We're taking what's actual, and then we're measuring it against that thing we said, that person we said we wanted to be. So we're taking our actual and measuring it against our potential. As we get started today, I'm going to ask you to find your chat box. And we're going to play a little game. If you've ever played the game, Would You Rather? We're going to play a quick round of Would You Rather. And I would like you to type your answer into the chat box. I'm going to give you a choice. You're going to have a choice of one of three things you can do. You can go on a hike alone. You can have dinner with a friend of your choice. Or you can go to a party. All kinds of people, all kinds of hyper-social situation. So which do you think you would choose? If you had any choice between all of those things, would you go on a hike alone, or have dinner with a friend, or go to a party? Let's think about that. You have a dinner with a friend. We have two, dinner with a friend. Well, everybody wants to go to dinner. I think it's been a long time. That's a party, dinner. Okay. No hikers. We're all going to a party or dinner. Great. I think after a year of being locked away, so you suggest, we just want to get out with other people. We're really craving that. That's wonderful. Now, while your chat box is still opening, I'm going to ask you to do the opposite. Which of those three would you least like to do? Any of those just not look like something you would, if you had to pick one that didn't look good? Have the party, the hike alone, the least is party. So they're all good. I could take any of those. The hike. Yeah, the hike was the least popular. So let's just bookmark this for a moment, but I'll say this. Of course, you have your reasons. Some of you even mentioned maybe the reason, oh, we've been in quarantine for so long, I just can't wait to go out and have a party or go to a party or be around people again. So either of those are fine, dinner with a friend or whatever. Or maybe there's another reason. Let's say maybe we're a very social person. We love going to parties, but the thing that we avoid the most is being by ourselves. We don't like to be by ourselves. Some folks really prefer to be by themselves, and the idea of going to a party makes them nervous. Or maybe you're the type of person who's okay with being around a close friend, but you don't do well in these hyper-social situations. We all have variables. We all have reasons we like to do what we want to do, and reasons that we don't like to do what we don't like to do. There's a verse in Matthew 25, verse 21 or 29 that says, for whoever has will be given more, and they will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, Even what they have will be taken away from them. So what does this word have mean? A lot of people use this to say, oh, you know, the power of attraction. And if you in your mind, if you have stuff, then you can have more stuff. And I don't really think that that's necessarily what this is saying. The word have here appears 4 times in this one small passage. The Greek word in here is echo. And this means to own, to possess. Almost has a feeling of holding it in your hands. So what does that mean? To have something, to hold it, to own it. When we think about who we are, we can react to things as they happen, or we can understand the type of person that we are. And by understanding the person that we are owning our characteristics. We are holding our life. We're not just guessing. We have a sense of who we are and what we're about. As we're looking at our own lives, we can tend to be distraught. We want to hold it. We want to own our lives, but I want to give a caution. We talked about recognizing our reality versus looking at our potential. And there is a gap between there. And sometimes we can get overwhelmed or disappointed when we think, oh my gosh, I'm this person. I'm withdrawn and isolating, and I want to be out there open and having a good time. And we can kind of become despondent about that and become upset, and even result in a lack of good self-esteem because we're not where we need to be. But owning it and holding it doesn't mean getting stressed out about it. Holding it and owning it means understanding where I am and where I can be, and understanding the path between those two opposites. So I want to focus today on something that I call the tension between opposites. Now, I promised you that I would talk about living a life with purpose. And I find that the key to living life with purpose is finding the sweet spot between what is possible and what is actual. And here's what I mean. We look at who we are, our actual, and we look at who we could be, our potential, and we look at them as separate things. Well, I'm going to put that on a shelf for a moment and ask you to just look at these two numbers, 0 and 1. We think of that as a switch, off and on, a binary choice. But in reality, in between 0 and 1, there's actually a lot that goes on. It's not just one thing or another. If you started to think about what comes between 0 and 1, well, half. Between 0 and 1, a 0.5, a half. But then you have 0.51, 0.52. You can go to 0.525, 0.526, 0.5266, and an unending string of things that can happen between a no thing and a one thing, between potential and actualization. There's a lot between that 0 and 1. So when I say exploring the tension, don't be nervous about that word tension. But when two things collide, there's friction, yes? But when we explore the gap between these things, like open or withdrawn or happy or barely hanging on, like how many of us are on one pole or another on a given day? Usually we're somewhere in the middle. Maybe I'm doing a little bit better than barely hanging on. Maybe I'm having kind of a good day, and if happy was a 10 and barely hanging on was a 1, maybe I'm at a 3 or a 4. Then maybe something negative happens during the day. I react to it and I go back down to like a 2 or a 1. Maybe the next day I win the lottery and then I'm at a 10. you know? Who knows? At any given day, these are variables. They're not one or the other. They're variable things. I call this idea that, hey, look, I'm either open to the world, or I'm withdrawn within myself. I call that binary thinking, because we think that one has absolutely nothing to do with the other. And it's an extremely bad habit to get into, because we end up identifying, I am this thing, I am not this thing, and it stops us dead in our tracks. It stops our growth, and it stymies our potential. Okay? I'm going to introduce to you what I've gotten to call spectral thinking. Just like between the zeros and the ones, there's a whole range of emotion. There's a whole range of states of being between open and withdrawn. We're using that as our example. And I'm going to bring back the infamous dial. We're going to think about our dial. It's not a switch on and off. It's a dial that we can turn back and forth. Maybe on one given day, I'm feeling particularly withdrawn. I'm feeling particularly by myself. But it's possible maybe to just move that needle a little bit, move the dial just slightly, just enough. Let's see how that might work. I call it this. A lot of times, things that we're struggling with come from pain, obviously, in our life. Pain that we've experienced may cause us to do things like withdraw into ourselves. And I found that the way to break that cycle is to turn the dial towards something we enjoy, towards our passion, towards our joy. That may sound like a bit esoteric, but let me show you a real life example as to how this might work. This is a very true story. I had gotten to a point in my life where I was sad. On a scale of 1 to 10, I was at a negative 12 when it came to being happy and well-adjusted about life. And it got to the point where I didn't want to leave my house anymore. I didn't want to be around people anymore. I just sort of wallowed in my depression, and I let myself go. I started to gain a bunch of weight, started to eat a bunch of crappy food. And then I looked around my apartment, like I didn't bother to do the dishes. I didn't bother to take the trash out. And then one day it snapped for me. And I just decided, you know what? I can't live like this. And I started thinking about, wouldn't it be nice to have friends again? Wouldn't it be nice to go out and enjoy life again? And I thought, wouldn't it be great to do something great with my life? Wouldn't it be great to do something that mattered? I really felt like I wanted to help people. But then I looked around and saw my reality and realized, man, that was going to take me a long time to get there. And I looked at those piles of trash and I went over and I decided, no, today's the day. And all I could manage to do was grab one or two things and take it down to that dumpster and throw it away. And then I came back, I was feeling kind of good, and I washed one or two of the glasses and put those away. And the next day I took out some more trash and washed some more glasses. And then eventually I was looking around online for classes I could join or groups that I could join. And I started to come out of my shell. So it was just that one bag of trash. And every day after that, I just moved the needle towards my joy, away from all this depression that I was feeling, and started to turn it towards something I was passionate about. I wanted to do good in the world, and I wanted to have friends again, and I wanted to get out of the house. All these things I wanted to do, I was able to move that needle. So I went from so withdrawn by using things that I enjoyed, things I was passionate about, and I was able to move that needle a little bit more towards the open and being out in the world. Now, fast forward about a decade or so, I start hitting the road. I start traveling everywhere. And eventually I start staying in these hostels, and I was in a very social situation. If you've ever stayed in a hostel, you know you're around people 24 hours a day. I began to notice that it's really starting to get to me because I couldn't organize my thoughts anymore. I couldn't get anything done. And I was like, man, I just need to get away for a moment. In this case, the whole system was reversed. So now my pain was coming from the fact that I was hypersocial and that it was starting to have its effect on me. So I had to turn that dial again. Now my passion, my joy was finding some time to myself. And so I had to withdraw a little bit because that hypersocial situation was starting to really get to me. See what I mean about owning our stuff? Holding on to it, possessing it, understanding it, unlocking it, to know where we are. That awareness is so key. Look, you've met most people. Most people have no clue what's going on around them. Most folks you meet aren't very aware of anything inside themselves or in the environment that you're in. What an amazing journey, what a magical journey it is to understand and to process your pain and to understand and to process your joy and how those things work together in your life. And you really begin to find day to day, you begin to find that life starts to have a purpose and a meaning, and life is nuanced and beautiful, like that beautiful rainbow that's between those two opposite points. So here's something I like to call the luck in the key method. So sometimes when I think about passion or joy, I like to think of that as a key. And when I think about pain or hurt, I always think of that as a lock. And what's interesting is that a lot of times you'll find that something on your list of passions will unlock something on your list of pain. And I'm going to go through a few examples here for you. So in this example, I've written down, this isn't necessarily my list, I've just sort of created one. I'm going to look at the subject of gardening on my list of things that I'm passionate about, and I'm going to compare it on the list of things that are causing me pain. I'm going to see if there's a lock that I can pick with something that brings me joy. So if gardening is something that brings me joy, I'm going to look over here at this list and look at my loneliness and think about, is there something in between, in the tension between gardening and loneliness? Is there something in the middle there? Can I meet halfway and use this to unlock my loneliness? Is there a gardening group? Maybe my passion for gardening will overtake my wanting to be alone. Maybe there's something about gardening that'll make me want to go out and join a community garden and start to get to know people. And as I look at it, think about, I'm really not getting the exercise I need in the week. Maybe I should up my gardening game a little bit. Normally, I just garden whenever I feel like it, but I'm going to set a goal for myself that this week I'm going to spend 2 hours gardening and getting outside. That's my goal. And maybe a month from now, I'm doing 3 hours a week. You can tell I don't know anything about gardening. I don't know how long it takes to do it. Now I'm going to take gardening and look at stress. Well, that's almost a no-brainer. If you enjoy gardening, obviously it's something that takes you to a peaceful, enjoyable place. If I spend a little time gardening, or I increase the amount of time I'm spending on gardening, maybe it'll reduce the level of stress that I have in my life. So let's take another example. Perhaps you're the creative type and you really like to paint, but maybe you're a person that also sort of struggles with your self-esteem. In between these 2 points, there may be a way to pick the lock of low self-esteem with the joy of painting. Perhaps we can do two things at one time. Perhaps I can join other artists, people who are just starting out with painting, and we can compare our work, and I can see what they do. And because they're fellow painters, I can show them my work. I can be real uncomfortable with it, but maybe I build a trust enough to where I can start to show my work. And they say, wow, I never thought of using that brush stroke, or I love your use of color. And we start to feel a little better about ourselves. I don't know if painting's a lot of exercise, but it certainly would cut down on your stress if it's something that you enjoy. Perhaps there's even something in there that can help you with not being able to make ends meet. Is there a co-op that you can get involved in where you can sell your paintings? Can you set up a little booth? Can you put it on an online marketplace and see if there's a market for some of the things that you enjoy doing? And finally, I'm going to give you one example because I enjoy this example of mornings. And I'm just going to take you through the list and show you how incrementally, by turning the dial, we can make differences in our lives. I am a morning person. I love everything about it. I love putting on that fresh pot of coffee. I love hearing the birds sing in the morning. I love the chill that's in the air. I love the quietness of mornings, everything about it. So as I looked at along this list, I started to get really excited about the potential of mornings, right? If morning's something I'm passionate about, which I am, then maybe there's a way I can unlock some of this pain that I'm going through. Not unlock it. I'm not suggesting that morning's going to cure everything that's wrong with you. Remember, we're not looking at that I'm this, not this. I'm a morning person with low self-esteem. We're not worried about that. We're worried about the gap in between there. Incremental change, not beating ourselves up about what we're not. So if I'm a morning person, I'm thinking about my low self-esteem. Is there something I can do in the morning that might help my struggle with low self-esteem? And for a while, I did this very thing. I would allow myself once every day or every time I remembered to do it, I would kind of trigger that every time I poured that cup of coffee, before I was allowed to have my first sip of coffee in the morning, I had to be grateful for something. Sometimes it was just that cup of coffee. I had to think about something in my life that I was grateful for. I had to say thank you to the universe. And I noticed that every time I participated in this morning ritual, it really started to build something positive in my life. Because normally the first thing you think of sometimes when you wake up is, oh my goodness, what do I have to do today? What are all the things on my agenda? How am I going to handle this issue, this conflict? But by allowing ourselves to take a moment of gratitude, we've now set the course for an entirely different day than we would have had otherwise. Maybe I can find another morning person. And perhaps once a week, me and this other person get together now for a Zoom chat when we're allowed to be around each other again. Perhaps we decide that the two of us are going to meet once a week and go for a walk. Now I'm starting to get that exercise that was causing me pain. Now we think about mornings as far as stress goes. If you wake up in the morning, maybe there's a ritual that you can do that will help calm your levels of stress. Could we take once a week? We could pick a morning, maybe every Sunday morning, we get up and take 10 minutes of standing outside and just using our meditative powers of listening to the birds chirp, feeling the wind blow, and just allowing yourself to enjoy 10 minutes of morning beauty. This one was a little harder. I can't make ends meet. How can I use my morning to help me make ends meet? Perhaps I assign that once a week for 30 minutes that I look at job openings. I go through classifieds and see if I can find something. One thing I actually did was I signed up for Postmates, and 2 or 3 times a week, as I was having my coffee, I'd turn on the Postmates app, and I didn't have a car. They let you just walk and deliver. So I was getting my exercise. I was feeling good about myself. And if an order came in, I was all excited. I got to go make a little extra money. Plus I got to walk, and I got to always meet some lovely people. So I committed to doing that for between the hours 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., 3 days a week. That's what I did. So as you can see, there are lots of reasons to hope. We're not this or that. We are this wonderful, complicated web of a spectrum of different things. We're not simply composed of our worst attributes or our biggest struggles. I want you to understand that today, that you are all of that. You're the range of all that is possible. Yes, you are who you are, and you are where you're at, but you are also an amazing bundle of potential. And you can get there from here. You can make your life more passionate and more robust. And that's going to lead us to this. I have your mini project for the week. I would really enjoy hearing about your passions and your pain, as much as you're willing to share them. Now, you certainly don't have to share this list with anybody. It can be totally private to you. If you're comfortable sharing it with us, I welcome that as well. But I'd like you to make a list of the things that bring you joy in your life. And I want you to make a list of the things that still hurt. And take a look at those lists and see if you can find some keys in your list of joys that will unlock some of that pain that you've been going through. And see if together, maybe we can find some common ground between those two opposites. And I look forward to hearing all about it. And I have, it's been my privilege to share this time with you today. Now, I'm going to end a little earlier today because I want us to be able, we have 3 weeks worth of lessons and projects to go through. So I'm going to end a little bit early today so that we have a little extra time to spend together. And I'm going to say to all of you who joined us today, thank you very much for joining us for the Embrace Life project. And we hope you'll come back next week. And I'm going to encourage you to go to ucccme.org/ELP. Donate to the Embrace Life project if you can.